Ladies and gentlemen, this is Lisa Tingalibala, the Certain Branch Secretary. And we are starting our event, which is then titled Learning from the Giants, and is a then reflections on the journey of Lincoln Mali. And I was saying earlier on that Mr. Mali seems to not be growing old at all. Uh, because he still looks the same as I then remember him 10 years ago, you know. I have grown a slight goatee, but I see that there's been no form of the age change on his side. And I think that tonight we are in great company. Because we are then hosting Mr. Mali, and Mr. Mali's facilitator is our branch chairperson, Dr. Sibongile Vilakazi. And I think we're just in great company because our chairperson is quite a formidable businesswoman. She is also in the then running up, Mr. Mali, for your Standard Bank Top Woman in Science Award.
Yes.
So I think it's also something very, very important that the then BMF Centre is well led, and I am proud to be her secretary. And her then profile keeps on rising as the months and the years go. And to those who are new to the forum, just to be then specific, Mr. Mali as well, in a then marketing sense, he is what we then would then use the words of Jay Bear, who is a good marketing exec. And then he says social media allows big companies to act small. And that is Mr. Mali. In as much as he wears a very big hat, he's able to sit in the room and is the most humblest soul you will ever meet. So when you then engage with him, you will then feel a sense that this is a man who then truly embodies that humble leadership role. And from a thought leadership perspective, Mr. Mali has been a friend of the BMF, I think going on 15 years now, if I'm not mistaken. And that's very powerful from then our view. And I see from the then attendee list that there are many formidable figures in the room. So I don't wish to take more time because people will then start to send these private texts and say, hey, Lisa, why don't you then introduce me as well? Because I'm also a formidable figure, you know. So I will then allow our chairperson, Dr. Sibongile Vilakazi, to then take over as the facilitator to run the session. And I do know that we will have a very great program this evening. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you so much, SG. Yeah, you've really organized this event quite well with the team, and I'm really proud of you guys managing to get us such a great friend of the BMF, but also an ethical leader. I think Mr. Mali is known for all the beautiful work that he does, especially around advancing women leadership as well. He's a well-recognizable name when we talk about corporate leaders, and especially Black leaders who are doing really well and flying the flag very high for us as Black managers and Black leaders, a concept that is very dear to the BMF. We are about that. We are about developing managerial leadership. We are about making sure that we get as many Black leaders that we can be proud of as possible, especially ethical leadership or leaders with integrity, high integrity. So we always want to associate ourselves with those kind of leaders and say, if we can identify them and say, let's sit around the table and just discuss and talk about what does it mean to be a leader and what does it take to be a leader, because it's a word that is often thrown around quite easily, but it's an act that very few know how to execute. Because to be quite frank, there is no school for leadership. We've got schools that teach us how to manage organizations. You can go and study an MBA and learn about the different aspects that makes an organization succeed and how to run a complex organization. And you can come back with those skills and say you've got a certificate that shows that you've learned the skills of how to do this. But leadership itself is a function of something much deeper than just knowing the intricacies of running a company. Leadership is a character, it's a personality, it's an act, it's a caring heart, it's a whole lot of things that are more about character than they are about skill. And because there's no school, we get taught what leadership looks like. We can see it when we see it, that this is good leadership. Even when it's bad leadership, we can see this is bad leadership, but you don't know what it takes to develop it, either good or bad, because it's so much ingrained in character. And so whenever we identify those amongst us who are flying that flag of what leadership should look like, we like as a BMF to bring them on board and say, come, let's sit together and tell us what it has taken for you to get to the point where you are at the moment, and what are some of the challenges, because it's not an easy journey. What are some of the challenges that you would have experienced that then you can help us, those who are coming behind, to avoid certain things by learning from the footsteps that you would have taken. So thank you so much, Lincoln, for allowing us to have this conversation with you, for taking the time. And I do understand that at the moment we're even mourning a very big a name in South Africa at the moment, our Auditor General, and you, I understand that you guys have a very close relationship that you've shared. So it's actually a very difficult a moment that we are having this conversation, you know, and he's also a leader who has really served the country quite well. And he has shown us what it means and what it takes to lead with integrity. We've seen it in front of our eyes. So actually we are in deep mourning as we speak today. And for you personally, it's a personal matter. And we really appreciate that even after the news, you've still felt the need to honor this invite. We really appreciate that. And thank you so much for that. So maybe then just to kick off, the introductions have already been done. We all know Lincoln. If you don't know, please go and Google him. You should know him, and especially if you are here, you should know him. But if you don't, you at least see this session will give you some kind of an idea of who are we talking about and why have we invited him to have this session with him. And thank you everybody who's listening today, who's with us. Please, we encourage that this session will have a conversation, and it's a conversation. So it's not just between Mr. Lincoln and myself. We really encourage that you also participate and ask questions and engage in this conversation, especially because we are living in a time in this country where we really need to be seeing more and more leaders and talking more about leadership, because that's the one thing we are really struggling about at the moment as a country. So the more conversations like this we can have, the better, and the more we can develop each other. So maybe just to kick off, Mr. Lincoln, I don't know if you have you can share some comments about your own journey, because today's session is about learning from giants such as yourself. Your journey of leadership and your thoughts around leadership. What do you think leadership is and is not, and how does it get ingrained in the leadership qualities? How do they get ingrained in one's personality and character and way of doing things on a day-to-day basis?
Excellent. Chair, thank you so much to the BMF leadership and membership for the opportunity to share a few thoughts with you. And I think that it, as you say, it's an opportune time because we've lost Kimi, somebody who embodies the kind of values we cherish, selflessness, humility, probity, integrity. And so an opportunity like this is so good so that we can, take up the baton, take over the baton from him and continue. So when Ms. Alicia talked to me about this thing of standing on the shoulders of giants, I thought he got it completely wrong because by no stretch of imagination would I ever think of myself as a giant. But he was unrelenting. Then I thought, let me flip the script. Rather than arguing with him whether I'm a giant or not, let me talk about the giants that I've stood on whose shoulders I've stood on. What have I learned from them? So I'm going to start by just sharing my screen and just giving you a sense of some of the thoughts. And a lot of those thoughts come from African proverbs, African scholars, African traditions, because it defines who I am and what I've learned from. I have studied in many universities across the world, but the things I've learned from Africans, ordinary Africans, elders, traditions, culture, are still more important than what I've learned at business schools. So you asked a very important question quite early on, which is, why do you want to lead? What is this leadership thing? Most people get into leadership for the perks, for the status, for the power, or the money, or the glory. If that's how you're inclined, you are likely to make bling-related type decisions. You're going to carry yourself on the basis of status. Yet on the other hand, if you are inspired by something bigger than you, a cause, a principle, a struggle, or an objective, then you are built around that, and your leadership is built around that. I'm not in any moment saying there's no need for bling. Of course, people like their blings, but that should not be the defining reason why you lead. Leadership is not a title held, it's an influence felt. How are you felt by those that you purport to lead? So in my own life, I have been inspired by Africa. I am Africa inspired in my conduct, in my relationships, in who I speak to, who I relate to, how I dress, how I speak. I don't see myself as confined to one place called South Africa because that's where I was born. I see myself being part of a larger continent, and I draw inspiration from different parts of this amazing continent. So we are at this moment that you've outlined, Chairperson, as well, a moment of great need, where Africa is crying out for incredible men and women of promise who are willing to take on the huge task of changing the direction of our continent to ensure the well-being of its people, and most importantly, to secure the future of our kids. More people profess to be this, but in reality, very few actively day in and day out do things that help this continent to be better. I have learned from some amazing Africans and leaders, and I have put up my hand to be one of the midwives of Africa's rebirth. Yes, it may look dark when you look across the continent, but those of us who have believed that Africa shall rise again. So if I go to the next slide, I have a wonderful African proverb that says, smooth seas do not make skillful sailors. Without being tested in the furnace of action you can't lead. Without being tested by the challenges of what it is that you're confronting, you can't grow. Without being tested by adversity, you can't prosper. And I think for us and for many BMF leadership, when we take on these jobs in our companies or in the public sector, we must be competent or must grow towards competence. We must become the best in our professions, best in our areas of excellence. Competence is non-negotiable. We've seen huge scandals of people with no qualifications, no experience, no expertise being asked to run big companies, big organizations. And they used our language of transformation. They used our language of transformation. But it was not about that. It was about them, their families, and their friends. Transformation has to be about excellence. I don't admire companies that are transformed, but they don't perform. Neither do I admire companies that perform, but they're not transformed. They go together, same WhatsApp group. So it's not only enough to be competent, but we must perform at the highest level. Precisely because sometimes when we take up these jobs, there's doubt. We must do our best in spite of the odds against us to perform at the highest levels. So performance is very important. So this time has tested all leaders. And many of you who've gone to business school have known about the omnipresent CEO, the omnipresent leader who knows it all, who's the president of the country, knows it all. That's the business school mindset. This macho a leader, mostly male, and they think that they know it all and they lead everybody, and everybody is just an extra. They're the main act. What COVID-19 has shown us is that the true essence of leadership requires empathy and compassion. And those leaders that have shown empathy and compassion during this time have now delivered better results. I speak of Jacinta Ardern in New Zealand. I speak of Angela Merkel in Germany. Because these things that were taught at business schools are now unraveling because the piece of empathy is being undermined. The piece of compassion is being undermined. From Chad, we get this proverb that says, honesty doesn't mean saying everything you think, but thinking everything you say. So these are very difficult times where integrity is in short supply, probity is in short supply. We are looking for those men and women of integrity and excellence. Men and women like Kimima Kwetu, who cannot be bought and cannot be sold, whose word means everything. We want the next generation to be like that. We had those leaders in the Mandelas and the Susulus and the Mbekis, Govan Mbekis of this world. What is happening in our generation? What shall we leave our children? So if I think about integrity, it is so important. Without it, no real success is possible. No matter whether we're dealing with the section gang, a football team, or just an office, everywhere you need integrity. You need trust in the people who lead. Now, if we go to Sudan, there's a wonderful saying that says a large chair does not make a king. A large chair does not make a king. We are asking for, or we've learned from those who came before us, humility, selflessness, for leaders to be what they call in Xhosa, indandaziswe, not indandaziso. People who love their land, who love their people, who do everything for their people, not for themselves or their families. Not cronyism, not corruption. a large chair does not make a king. Now, you think about leadership. You think about the fact that you all every day in a leadership role have to fight against arrogance, pride, hubris, and ego every day. And as you win that struggle to remain grounded, principled, and humbled, you remember that the very next day, that battle to start again, to remain humble, remains. Sometimes the people around you create a false sense from you, where everything, if you are a president, everything president. If you are an executive, executive director, a DG. I have a name. My name is Lincoln or Lincoln, depending which school you went to. If I'm fired by Standard Bank, I'm going to 10097 at Duna Street, KwaZakele. That's where I come from. I can't be defined by the titles of today. We must learn this thing of being humble. Humility doesn't mean being timid, but it puts others ahead of self. I am reminded, Chairperson, of a story told by one of the pioneers of the BMF, Eric Mafuna, sitting with Thabo Mbeki under a tree in Mozambique. And they tell the story of a Barotse chief. They come to this Barotse chief and say, "You are wanted at the palace." He rushes and he gets there, and they tell him the king, the Lutunga, has passed away. Obviously, he's distraught, passes his condolences and everything. Then they call a meeting, and then they say, the nation has decided that you, chief, are now going to be the king, are now going to be the Lutunga of this community. Everybody looked at him and for his response. Is he going to beat up his chest? Is he going to say, "Yeah, I'm the man"? The man said, "You have just killed me." They said, "What do you mean?" And he said, "For the nation to rise, I must die." How many of us as leaders say, in order for my team or for my organization to succeed, my personal ego and ambition has to die? So when you go to Nigeria, in the Igbo world, it says what a woman does is what she will teach. What a woman does is what she will teach. This talks about diversity, inclusion, and belonging in our teams, in our communities, in our environments, in our organizations. When George Floyd says, "I can't breathe," he represents many people in corporates, in SOEs, who can't breathe because of the autocratic styles of leadership that we exercise as leaders. When Vice President-elect Kamala Harris says, "I'm speaking," she's representing so many women who in our organizations are muted because their voice is muffled. We talk over them, we undermine them. There's misogyny, there's machoism in the workplace. I ask you to lead teams that are diverse. That people must be embraced no matter who they are, no matter where they come from. That we must lead teams that are diverse. Not this problem that if I am from Port Elizabeth, the people working in my department are all from Port Elizabeth. Or if I'm Xhosa speaking, the majority of people in my department are Xhosa speaking. Why? We must have diversity. Women leadership and women empowerment cannot just be lip service. It must be real. Equal pay for equal work must be real, not lip service. It must be done in our environments. Not talking, but doing in our spheres of influence. Traditional African proverb says, "Without fools, there would be no wisdom." This is about caring in growing our people, gives them an opportunity to express themselves. Today's fool is tomorrow's genius. Today's stupid ideas are tomorrow's innovation. God had a plan to give us 2 ears and only one mouth as leaders. We must be able to listen. We must be able to sense and get the pulse of our people. And also get feedback from our people. We don't want to be like the presidents of one of the countries I shall not mention. They say to him, "Oh, Mr. President, Your Excellency, when are you finally going to say goodbye to the people?" He says, "Why? Where are the people going?" There was a slight feedback problem there. So we must have the ability to listen to different ideas, because without fools, there will be no wisdom. If serving is below you, then leadership is beyond you. Our organizations have to change from profit to purpose, from hierarchies to networks, from control to empowering, from planning to experimentation, from privacy to transparency. That is what we have to do in our organizations. All of us. The next proverb that has guided me is that a speaker of truth has no friends. It's very difficult in the corporate world, in government circles, in SOEs, in political parties, to speak the truth. But it's a choice. If you want to be authentic, you stand by your truth and you speak truth to power. Fidelity to principle matters to me rather than fidelity to a personality or the current dogma or the dominant group. Does it mean it's lonely? Yes, it is. Does it mean it's got consequences? Yes. Is there a price to pay? Of course. But is the price I pay very, 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 very easily, because I'm not for sale. I'm not going to say something that's green, it's orange. I speak the truth and I live with my truth and the consequences thereof. So this requires us to be authentic, to relate to our people in the deepest possible way, to understand them. But it's for us also to come up and show up as our genuine selves, not a replica of somebody else. Yes, I know there are people who want to succeed at all costs. That's your choice. Mine, I don't want to succeed at all costs. My name matters to me. My ideas matter to me. My positions matter to me. My ideology, my values, my principles matter to me. So when you go to the DRC, they tell us wisdom is like fire. People take it from others. Leadership is about lifelong learning. In all my journey, I keep learning, and I'm learning all the time. And I'm learning a lot from those who are younger than me. That's why I have a passion for young leaders. Lifelong learning and innovation is important. Leaders cannot be stuck where they are. They will grow. They got to open up. They got to challenge their own perspectives and see how the world is looking. When we are now in the midst of a COVID-19, all of our businesses have to be re-looked at. We got to reimagine the future, reimagine our products and services, reimagine our operations, reimagine our business models, reimagine the way we work, reimagine our partnerships. Because tomorrow is not like yesterday. So a leader that cannot learn, that cannot innovate, will be stagnant and will keep an organization stagnant, or a society stagnant, or a community or an organization stagnant. As I try and get to the end, from Ghana we learn that wisdom is like a baobab tree. No one individual can embrace it. You know, in my life, it's benefited me to have deep roots where I learn from the people of my community, where I come from, where I learn from my clan, where I learn from my elders, which means my roots are deep. Yet, I strive to always have a global reach, to know what's happening in the world, what's happening with new innovations, what are the latest thinkers, what is the latest research. I do both. Deep roots, a global reach. Someone with deep roots who's not growing is not helpful to us because they're stunted. Someone with a global reach but there's no foundation can just be moving with the wind. You've got to be deeply grounded whilst having a global reach. We have technology. Professor Mahwala and others are showing us that through technology, we can disrupt many things, but more importantly, we can solve some of Africa's intractable problems. We don't need more slogans. We need more clever people, more younger people to innovate, more entrepreneurs to solve our water problems, electricity problems, housing problems, health problems. We need new minds to solve these problems for our society. If you think about this incredible proverb, which says the sparrow said that since the hunter has learned to shoot without missing, it has equally learned to fly without perching. Think about it. The sparrow used to go and perch at different trees, but they worked out that the hunter now has learned to shoot without missing. So perching is not good enough. What that means for all of us as leaders is the ability to adapt, the ability to be responsive. To say I've got a business plan, to say I've got a strategy is nice and interesting. But when it hits the first obstacle and the strategy is gone, can you adapt? Can you change your business? And that's been beneficial. So all of us, we're now looking at our businesses. What do we do? Reviewing our cost structures, relocate our capex, optimizing working capital, relooking at our cash flows, looking at the revenue forecast, making decisions on capital, making sure that we've got liquidity, stretching and stressing scenarios. All of these things are important because an unlikely event has happened, which is COVID-19. So in Nigeria, a proverb says, no matter how your anger is, it cannot cook yams. So communication and engagement is important with your stakeholders, with your staff. Many leaders see communication as an add-on. It's at the core. Talking to your people, your stakeholders. I spend so much of my time, 80% of my time in my career, I've spent with staff and customers. Other 20% I spend in the meetings that obviously everybody's got bosses that the bosses want. But people want to run their businesses from the comfort of their offices. An office is a dangerous place from which to run a business. So during this COVID-19, keeping your employees safe, regular communication with your customers, regular engagement with your stakeholders, focusing on reducing loss, keeping the operations open, making sure that things are operating as normal as possible. This is what you do. That empathy and conversion that I spoke about. So in the end, when I finish, I come back to a lecture I attended given by Professor Clay Christensen, who asked a very deep, penetrating question. How will you measure your life? And this question arose at a time where my finances were not balanced. My health was not balanced. My work-life balance was not there. I had to make a deep introspection to change. Because if I didn't change, maybe I would be divorced. Maybe I would be bankrupt. Maybe I would have no relation with my children. maybe I would have died of a heart attack or any of those things. So I phrased this notion of towards a more balanced scorecard, because we are so obsessed with a balanced scorecard at work. What about our spirituality? What about our relationship with our children? What about our relationship with our wives, girlfriends, boyfriends, partners? What about our mental health? What about our personal health? What about our relationship with our communities? So, Madam Chair, as one politician said after speaking for 3 days, there concludes my opening remarks.
Oh, thank you so much for that, Lincoln. That is so beautiful. I'm particularly intrigued by the pictures. I like the faces of women representing wisdom.
Thank you, my leader. Thank you.
And there's so many of them. Yeah, thank you so much for that. And I find it interesting the angle that you've chosen to take this talk. That you decided that let me look at the people on whose shoulders, or the giants on whose shoulders I've been standing on, because I mean, no greatness happens haphazardly. We all have to stand on giants, and hence we're having this conversation to you because we see you as a giant. And I would like to take this conversation back to you as the giant that you are, because I think the reason you've taken this angle is also testimony to the concept you've been talking about of humility. That as leaders, you need to reflect humility. But also, most importantly, giants tend to not see themselves as giant, because it's ordinary people who are doing great things every day without realizing that they're doing great things, because all they are doing, they're just doing what needs to be done. So you don't realize that you are being a giant every day as you do these things. So maybe just a question for you, to go back to your leadership, to say, at what point did you realize that you were not just an executive, as you were talking about earlier, that you were more than an executive, but a leader? That you are not just about the glamour and what the position brings, the position of being an executive brings, but you wanted to do something more meaningful and deeper in your roles.
Yeah, the biggest influence came from my father, and also many other people that were there in the darkest times of my life, in the 80s, where all we could see in front of us was death, violence, detention, murder every day. And we were very angry, and we wanted to bring the apparatus system down and make the country ungovernable. And so education was not important. We wanted to fight. And my father intervened by challenging us, by saying, if you believe in these things, you have to fight for something bigger. And you have to change yourselves to be the weapons of this change that you want. And you must be that change. And so there were a number of things that my father instilled in me at a very young age. One, never chase positions. Never chase status. Never take yourself seriously. Just be an ordinary person. And therefore, when I'm with my friends, when I'm with my family, I'm the same guy. I don't change and put on this mask and put on that mask. Second thing my father was instilling in me was treat everybody with respect and dignity, regardless of their station in life. Third thing that my father showed was the way he treated my mom, my sisters, and everybody else. That was a way in which I think I kind of understood, or for my first journey into feminism, started from my dad. And so when I took on roles and responsibilities in my life, I carried so many of those teachings. And there was no way, therefore, I could act differently. So any promotion that came didn't change who I was, because what was instilled in me by those giants mattered. Those people who made sure that I am what I am today never got any recognition from it. They did it because they cared. My sports coach, Mr. Wilfred Kovu, will do everything to make sure that we're prepared in our sport. My teachers, Mrs. Morpa, who took us when we were expelled from school to another school. So there are many of these people whose selflessness, whose humility showed me what true leadership was about. So I couldn't therefore change because now I'm in a corporate and everybody calls me executive or whatever it is. I just continued normal. And then at home, I must guard what I say because my wife is here. You know, we work from home. At home, my titles mean nothing. Here, you can come at a high, and then you're told you were meant to do that thing and you didn't do it. And so it grounds you so that you don't have any airs and graces. So I think that sense of leadership and responsibility came from my parents, it came from my priests and teachers, and those early leaders of the liberation movement that we listened to coming from Robben Island. These people embodied what a leader was. And so every day I ask myself, am I worthy of those people? You know, in my home, there is a part of the house where I've got portraits that are done by sketch of all the key leaders that have influenced me in my life, which means every day I have to go past these guys. And if I were to do things that are wrong, what shall I tell Govan Beki? What shall I tell Albertina Sissoon? What shall I tell Ruth West? You know, these people were the embodiment of leadership. And there's no way I could then sacrifice what they've done because somebody has dangled a title or a piece of, wealth or whatever in front of me. So I come from those giants and I've learned from them.
Yeah, nice one, beautiful. And can I encourage everybody else like who's got a question or a comment or just for us to engage on this? So if you can just raise your hand and we'll recognize you, and you can ask that question that you would like to ask. And maybe just while we're waiting for those hands to come up, hopefully there's many of them. Just a follow-up question from what you've just said, because I think what you've just said is crucial. That the distance between yourselves and the leaders that we really looked up to and thought were exemplary is not that long. So you were able to, some of them you even knew them by name. Whereas right now, our generation is faced with a whole lot of challenges when it comes to integrity issues of people in positions of power who are not reflecting integrity. I mean, we've got the Zondo Commission right now as testimony, and we've got people in that commission who some of us really looked up to at some point, and we thought that these were great men and women who were leading in key positions in this country, only to now be so disappointed and feel let down and feel like actually there are no role models at the moment because the people that are closer to us are not showing us what should be done or how leadership should be performed. So how do we help this generation at the moment that is looking up to such a disaster of what leadership can be? What can we do, like as at least those who are have the blessing, like yourselves, of having seen what leadership could be and should be?
So if I go back to what I learned from those giants, they gave me time. We could go and see Govan Beki and sit with him and talk to us. Many Robben Island leaders spoke to us. Many other senior leaders spoke to us. Even when I started working, there were people that were senior than me. I could go to them. Aaron Rensberg, Sheila Sisulu, Tamim Seleku. There are all these people. Why is it that when I now am in a position of responsibility, I don't have the time? So I create time in my life to engage young people, not to lecture them, but to listen, share ideas, talk to them, learn from them. I also find time to write. I have a blog. I say it's a blog nobody reads, but whenever people stumble on it, they're like, oh my God, there's all of this stuff. That's where, for example, I interview people like Kimi Makwetu, Mteto Nyati, all of these people, Nomkita Ngweni, all of these people, to say, who are these people who've done well? What was their day, right? I do videos now on YouTube of talking about these things. So there are many ways in which we can give back to the younger generation the same way it was given to us. To us, Oliver Tambo would speak on Radio Freedom. We would go and listen. Thabo Mbeki would write in Sichaba. We would go and read. What is our job? To do exactly the same thing. To go and read the books written by people like Bonang Mohale, the books written by Teto Nyati. These are books of people who've gone into the journey that we can learn from. And so I think that there's a lot we can do in different facets, to go and lecture at business schools, to go and talk about our journey, our failures, our successes, our frustrations, all of that is what we need to do. More and more of our time, our resources, our energies must be given to help others, because we are what we are here, what we are today, because somebody cared before.
So true, so true. And I'm just gonna read some of the comments that are coming from the chat before we proceed. If people are too shy to come and talk to you in person. One of the comments is, I'm excited about this session. Good evening, everyone. Hi, no sister, greetings all. Okay, people are having their own conversation in the chat room. Evening to all attendants. We are in BMF Sentin branch, and this is okay. This is another one. Lincoln, you've come a long way from crafting youth policy. Your fingerprints are all over what resulted in that in the formation of the National Youth Commission, Fort Hare, with Mahlengi and other leaders of SASCO, and they are clapping hands for you. Yes, you have come a long way, and that's why I was saying, if you don't know Lincoln, please go and Google him, because we're not going to be telling you about who he is right now. Good to see you, Lincoln, and to hear from you. I still remember your photos I found in Ghana. At one of the Stanbic Ghana branch in Accra, with branch staff. I'm sure you know this person. You probably know who's saying these things. Speechless, awesome wisdom. Someone else is saying, excellent insights, so much wisdom. I'm inspired as a young Black woman. Thank you so much, Mr. Mali. Well said and inspiring. Thank you, sir. What a rich and profitable evening we are having. Thank you, PMF, and thank you, especially Lincoln. This is precious wisdom. There is sometimes this notion when women reach or are striving to get to a certain level in the organization, e.g. to lead as an executive, they require sponsors to support their journey. What is your view on that, Mr. Mali? This is from Lebo.
Yes, this is a very controversial subject, and I'm going to dive straight into it. When you look at Sim Chabalala, Mteto Nyati, Isecha Khanyago, Kimi Makwetu, and so on, very few people want to know who were their sponsors. They stand on their own because the sponsors are not visible. So I support the notion of supporting women only on the proviso that the sponsors are not in front. The sponsors are not visible, because it's not about them, it's about the person. So if, let's say, Chairperson, you were going to do some presentation somewhere, and you called me up and you said, can you look at this presentation? What do you think? And all of that. You can't be quoting me. It's a presentation. It's your presentation. You just asked me for help and I gave the help. So what I have a problem with is that sometimes the sponsors act like blessers, in that they are more prominent. And sometimes women, without understanding, undermine their own job and their own achievements by saying, I am so-and-so, my sponsor is Lincoln. No, I am so-and-so, period. If Lincoln is your sponsor, let him sponsor you, let him support you, but why should he be visible? Because we don't ask those names of Lincoln sponsor. We don't ask who's sponsoring Andy Lenomlala. We can't ask who are the sponsors of the women. So I agree, as long as we are not undermining the woman's intellect, her achievements and everything. Because sometimes when the woman has done well, the first thing everybody goes through is to say, these are the people. That's the only point I'm making. So yes, support is very important. I have worked with some incredible women over the last 20, 23 years or so across the continent. They are doing some amazing jobs in the bank and outside the bank. I have worked with them. You could use the word, I was a sponsor, but nobody knows that because it's not relevant. I have so many people I mentor. They do incredible job. Nobody knows that I'm their mentor because it's not important. So I think that's the only issue that I have quibbles. Sponsorship, very important. Support, very important, as long as it doesn't undermine the ability of women. In my career, I have asked, I've had women succeeding me in my jobs. I have picked women for key jobs, and they've never disappointed me. When it was not fashionable, I still remember in 2001 in Zimbabwe, one of my first appointments was Pindi Nyandoro as the CEO of our bank in Zimbabwe. Pindi has done amazing things. Now she runs Central Africa. She runs 8 countries of Standard Bank. But there's no Lincoln behind Pindi's name. There's Pindi and what he does. You know, so that's the point that I was trying to emphasize.
Yeah, and it's interesting because as much as you say your name does not feature, you sponsored them, all these women, your name does not feature. It's funny that though that your name does feature. I think a big part of your reputation is based on the fact that you are a big supporter of women. So it's interesting, these things that even when you're not trying to be known, you do.
You know, the way I'm thinking about it, Doc, actually worries me because the reason why sometimes people are able to find less feminist male leaders is because we're few. If we were many, then our names wouldn't feature. What we say and what we write about promoting women and advancing women leadership wouldn't be as prominent. So though it's good that there's that recognition, but I want it to become a non-issue by more of us as men standing up on women's issues and do it every single day, not during the month of August. Women's issues are not the issue around August. If you're a male leader, can you lead a woman who's going through a divorce? Can you lead a woman who's having a miscarriage? Can you lead a woman who's in an abusive relationship? Can you lead a woman who wants to have children but cannot have children? Because those things are real, but they are not career destroyers. If there is support, which is the point that the person who was asking the question was talking about, that's what I'm talking about. Tangible support of standing by women through the difficulties. And when there's a time to appoint a woman, don't blink, make the appointment and not say they're not ready.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think what's at the heart of what you're saying is the intention. That when you are supporting, what is your intention? Are you supporting because you know this person needs support and we all need support? No one gets to the top or wherever by themselves. Or are you supporting because you want to feature in the story of that person? And it's the intention.
Don't be the picture.
Don't want to, So and thank you so much for that. And I've always wondered actually about this, and you've kind of touched on it, on why is it so easy for you to advocate for women the way. And I know, I mean, this session is not about women, by the way, so I don't want to make it about women, but it's such an important aspect of leadership, because you also spoke about it, the question of diversity, being able to lead different demographics in the workplace. And for you, the issue of women is a very close issue to your heart. And you are identified for that. And I mean, as you speak, it's anybody can tell. Why is it so easy yes, you've mentioned that it's because of your father. And what is it exactly that your father did that makes it so easy for you to know that this is it's a no-brainer? It's not something that we should be discussing, that it should be done, whether or not. It's a no-brainer. If you want society to move forward, you need to advocate for the people who are most likely to take society forward. And it's been proven time and time and again that women are the type of individuals who tend to focus more on society at large. So, and therefore they will take society forward. So why are you not developing them?
So let me start with men, and I'll come to women. So with male leaders, you have a lot of male leaders who deep down cannot accept being led by a woman. There are many male leaders who do not see women as equals. There are many male leaders who do not see that a woman should get to the top of an organization. There are also many male leaders who think that a woman's place should be in the home or in the kitchen. But they don't express these things directly. They do it through their deeds. There's a wonderful article which says sometimes your glass ceiling is lying next to you. In other words, if your own spouse or your own boyfriend does not see you rising to the top, what do? They try and find ways to undermine you. So my view is that if you fundamentally believe that women are equal, in my relationship, my wife and I have known each other for more than 30 years. We met at university. We've been equals all the time. Obviously, my children think that she's more equal than me. But the point is, I can't be a different person at work, but I've got misogyny at home. My two daughters, I want them to be the best thing that they can be. I want them to be fiercely independent. I want them to be ambitious. I want them to be assertive. Now, when I get to the workplace, I want the same thing for other people's daughters. So that's the male piece. Women leaders, there are wonderful examples of women leaders who create the space for women to lead, for women to be empowered, to change their organizations. But there are also an increasing number of women leaders who are only there for themselves. They get in and they close the door. Their environment is worse sometimes than when the man was in charge. And we must hold people accountable. The same way on transformation. If I'm looking there and you look at that company and say, who's in charge of that company? So and so. Why is there no transformation? You look there, you say, why is there no women development? So these are things that people, sometimes women want to be accepted by the status quo, and never they compromise other women. Some of those women sometimes take on a male persona. If the males are harsh and ugly and brutal to others, therefore, in order to be accepted, I must also be brutal to others. Jacinta Ardern says, no, I can walk to Parliament with my daughter.
Yeah.
There's a colleague now who was organizing us the technical stuff. I think Martha is her name. And whilst Martha was doing this, her child cried. I didn't say anything because we are in her home. Why is it that we think the child will be quiet? It's in the child's home. These are the things we have to think about. When we say work from home, we can't bring our toxic masculinity to the home. When we are in a Zoom and a child comes, we must just greet the child and continue until we're able to talk, not shout out the child. So I'm saying where women leadership will change leadership in general by bringing that compassion and empathy and sensitivity.
Yeah.
So I can talk all night on this topic. Sorry.
I know you're very passionate about it. And at some point we do have to challenge the systems, because the systems have a way of replicating themselves. So it doesn't matter who you put at the helm. The system will just replicate itself. So yeah, it's a very long journey that we'll have to walk. And if we go there, there's a lot of ideas as well on how do we get there. There's another question here. Somebody is saying, I like the humility perspective in everything you say. But how do we instill this in young people who have this entitlement mentality? This is without generalizing.
Look, I engage a lot of young people. And I like the questioner saying they're not generalizing. So millennials or Gen X or Gen Z and whatever are also a microcosm of society. Some of them are actually very, very attuned to the realities of life. Others, sometimes because of how they are brought up or the circumstances they find themselves in, may sound entitled. Others need, if you think of your Bible, need a Damascus intervention. Sometimes some event in life will humble them.
Yeah.
So what I do is that I go out of my way to engage young people. Every invite I get to go and speak to young people, I'm there and I enjoy it. People sometimes say, why do you like to do that? I say, because here at home, my vocabulary is very limited. It's limited to yeah, no dear, I'll do it now, dear. So when I go outside this house and I speak and there are people listening, my word, I mean, this is great. But when I engage young people, I learn a lot. I even learn mediums. I work with my partner, who's my advisor on social media things, Lebu Morare. Now, when I started thinking about, she was saying, no, my leader, you must do this. And I'm like, do what? Instagram? I'm like, no, I'm not doing those things. But she was able to say to me, you will reach the young people by speaking their language, by being in their zone, by understanding their world. So my sense is that young people want to be engaged. Young people don't want to be lectured. They want you to engage them. The same way my father challenged us who were angry, who wanted to just fight and challenge us to learn, to change our behavior, to go back to school. It is possible for us to influence some of those young people. The more we engage them and be persistent, we will be able to get through them and be able to get them on our side. I normally say to corporates, think of fees must fall. Fees must fall was like, boom, everybody, what is happening? Now, after fees must fall, many corporate executives or corporate leaders are thinking those people disappeared. Those people involved in fees must fall didn't disappear. They are now in our corporates. Why do we think they're going to be muted now? Because they're in our organizations. If we don't engage them, at one point they're going to explode right in the middle of our boardrooms. But if we engage them, hear what they say, yeah, man, maybe that's not the way to do it. Maybe you should do this, you find common ground. So I gain a lot by that engagement.
Wow. Yeah. So, and another issue that you spoke about that is very important and holds organizations together is integrity. And a leader without integrity essentially is not a leader. I mean, you can't lead without having integrity. But it's also a very difficult character trait to practice consistently. It's not as easy. I mean, we throw it around very easily, you need to have integrity. But as a leader, you are bound to find yourself in situations that will challenge that time and again. So, and I would like you to share experiences of how you've been challenged on the issue of integrity, and how do you make sure that you maintain it at all times, because it's not easy.
So again, if you speak to most people and you mispronounce their name, they are very upset with you because people have an obsession about their name and surname, right? Because it means a lot. Now, I always ask these people, if your name is this important, why would you sell it down the drain by doing things that will make your name permanently horrible? Because now, if you Google many of the people that are involved in corruption, the first thing that comes out is scandal. Just logically, if you treasure your name, your family, your heritage, why would you get yourself into those things? Secondly, the people who brought you here, your parents, your teachers, and all those people have instilled in most of us these values. We know what's right and wrong. We justify why we deviate from it. All of us have got good and bad within us, always a constant struggle. It's about our ability to rise up and get the bad suppressed. That's the key. The most important one is, do not think you can run away from ethical challenges or integrity challenges. They are going to be there. So I always say to people, when you read the stories of so-and-so signed this, or so-and-so was wrong with this tender, and so made this bad appointment or took this money, ask yourself all the time, if I found myself in that situation, what would I do? Now, I have people I have grown up with, I was involved with in the struggle, involved within the student movement, and they've taken some decisions more heroic than me. But I look at their example and say, what am I learning from Themba James Maseko? Because Themba James Maseko refused. What am I learning from Cebisi Jonas when he was offered 600 million? He refused. You know, there are many, many people who've stayed up against a lot of the corruption that you see. In corporates, lots of pressure by connected people, a dominant group for you to do something. I don't agree. Yes, there are many people who won't invite me to their Christmas lunches. Yes, I might not get the promotion. But you know what? I don't have somebody who's going to come knock on my door and give me an orange overall. That is good enough, incentive. And I always say to people, a lot of people talk about prison. I saw prison at a very young age. Believe me, I never want to go back. So I saw it at a young age for political reasons, but now I don't want to be arrested for involving myself in nefarious activity. So all of us will be tested. Stand your ground.
Yeah. And I mean, it's the false sense that you may not be caught. It's exactly that. It's a false sense. It always comes back to bite you. So you have to be very, very careful what you get yourself into. So yeah, and then other comments here. I'm hearing powerful wisdom, so inspired. Thank you so much, Mr. Mali. Very insightful and inspiring session. I'm so inspired. It's my first on this platform, and I would love to join BMF membership. Yay, Zelda! We welcome you. We want to hear that. I'm super eager to learn more about the value of trust. What does it mean to an individual in an organization? And I think we've touched on it briefly just now. I don't know if you have anything extra to add.
It's just two things. The one is, in a leadership role, the first trust has to be given by you to your people. And this is the hardest thing that leaders do. They can't trust. You can't get the trust unless you give the trust. In my entire career, I trust the people I work with implicitly. And I've been disappointed very few times. And when I've been disappointed, I deal with the person who disappointed me. I don't then get to deal with everybody I shall work with that level of mistrust. And that for me is very important.
Yeah, no, true that. You can't claim to, you can't expect people to trust you if you don't trust them. It's very true. Another comment we have here is, thank you for the chat, Lincoln. What do you think of suspending the trading of shares of JSE listed companies who do not comply with BE legislation? So companies with a BE level 8 score, for instance.
Look, I'm not sure about that specific one, but generally, I think that there should be more and more punitive measures taken against companies, whether it's a suspending of shares, whether it's fines, whatever it is. We can't be sitting in 2020 and still have this dismal performance when it comes to transformation. It's unacceptable. And I challenge many of my leader colleagues, both in my organization and outside, to explain to me why they can't find credible, competent, experienced, and highly qualified Black people. They can't give me an answer. They are there. It is the lens through which they're looking at them that's a problem. And I'm saying, clean your lens. Clean your lens because the people are there. Every job I've found, I go and I find credible people and I employ them and I promote them and they do amazing stuff. So it's nonsense. I challenge any leader in South Africa who says to me they can't find the quality people. In fact, one of the things that we were doing with one of the past presidents of BMF, we wanted to organize something with one of the banks, which is Standard Bank, where we would do career days, where the bank says, I can't find these skills. Send it to the database of BMF, and BMF says, here are the jobs. We say, here's a matching session. What does that do for BMF? It says to its members and potential member, the one who was saying you can get careers through being a member of BMF. And what does it say to Standard Bank? If you want a repository of the best skilled Black people, you'll find them in the BMF. So there are many creative ideas for those who are willing to make transformation to work. There are many creative ways in which this can be done. The status quo is unacceptable. So there have to be other measures, whether it's a suspending of shares or punitive measures, I don't know. All I know is that the current status quo is unacceptable.
No, it is completely unacceptable. Yeah. I guess that's why you're such a close friend of the BMF. We agree completely. Okay, so from my side, I'm looking at the time. We're almost running out of time, and there's quite a lot of comments here. I'm going to read them just now. But one question from me, last question from me. I mean, we're learning from giants, and we know that there is no road to success that does not include some bumps. At some point, you have to have been kicked very hard, and you thought, oh my God, I will never be able to get up from this one. But you managed to get up. Do you have an experience like that? And how can you advise, or what can you say to somebody who may be going through something, might not be similar, but it might be a very big bump that they think it's just going to be difficult to come out of?
Look, I'm so happy you've asked this question, because most people who see older or senior people think that their life or career has been linear. The reality is that there's a zigzag motion. We go through ups and downs. I have been disappointed. I have been a victim of corporate politics. I have been overlooked. I have been undermined. I have had people treating me badly. I have had people concocting all sorts of stories about me. Everything you can imagine has happened to me in a corporate environment and in society in general. But the key thing is about being resilient. There's that fire in my belly. There is that willingness to fight, that I will crawl over broken glass to get to where I want to get to. So I'm not, affected by those obstacles. They are just part of my journey. And when I think about the late Kimi, Kimi was diagnosed with cancer 2.5 years ago. We all didn't know. But Kimi had the courage. Kimi had the fortitude and the resilience to keep fighting, because there were things he needed to accomplish, one of which was to make laws that will punish the wrongdoers in municipalities and provinces who are chowing people's money. So the same thing with me. There are times where I feel that I've been treated so badly, but then I think about the thousands of people who look up to me, who are not in the committees where I am, who have no voice there. And then my job is to be speak the truth and speak about those people, carry their message. Sometimes the leaders don't want to hear those messages, but it's my job. And Ruth Ginsburg, Justice Ruth Ginsburg, says something that teaches us that she was in the minority in many of the Supreme Court judgments, but she wrote her minority judgments for posterity, because today's minority decision may be tomorrow's majority decision of philosophy. So even when you are defeated, when you are alone in an organization, when you're fighting alone against everybody else, persevere, persist, don't give up, because the majority is triumphant. That's been the story of my life. Whenever there are big odds against me, I go back to those people, those giants. How did they survive? How did the Mandelas, the Sisulus, the Govan Begis, the Krisanis, how did the Albertina Sisulus, how the Winnie Mandela, how did they survive? And I draw inspiration from our founding fathers and founding mothers. And therefore, I have to be resilient. I have to keep on fighting, because if I lose when I'm this senior, my word, what's going to happen to those that come behind me? So that's the journey I have to challenge myself on all the time.
Yeah, important, eh? Because those boardrooms, we like them, but yay,
Yes,
they can really be.
they beat you up and you are ridiculed and you think, no, go back, lick your wounds, re-strategize, and you're back. And these people are like, this guy, no, you're back.
Just
all
keep moving.
The time, because you are persistent and you are consistent. Sometimes there are people where you are coming on the corridors, they look the other way, they walk that way. Or there are times where you are not favored. Everybody knows you're not favored, so people don't talk to you. That's life. But there's something you're fighting for that's bigger than you.
Yeah. Truth, eh? And somebody is saying Lincoln spitting truth, and I agree so much. Amen. That's what they are saying there. And another comment there, guys. I think because this is because of time. The comments are very long, and there's so many of them, and I feel terrible that we can't read all of them because of time. These conversations do this all the time, because we hardly get time to just chat, amongst each other and say, help me. How have you done it, and what can I do to be better as well what I do? And that's why we like to have these sessions, but they always end up with us feeling like, oh my God, there's so much more we should be talking about, and there's so much more we should be asking, and we can't answer all the questions, unfortunately. And I really, really apologize for that. So I'm just gonna read one more comment before I ask our deputy chair to wrap up. I wonder if he's still around, because I know he also had to step out at some point. If he's still around, I'll ask him to wrap up and close the session for us. If not, SG will do that, do the honors for us. So there's one question. Is it a comment or a question? Let me see. Tata Mali is the biggest yet most invisible supporter of women. He is by far the most inclusive leader I have worked with, and dare I say, in Standard Bank. He is tough and is very clear that we must give our best. He truly is what he says. What a privilege for our paths to have crossed. Enkosi Tata for propelling my own growth and development. It truly is up to me to rise and pay it forward. Wow, this is really beautiful. This is so beautiful. I don't know if you have something to say to that, because this is, and it's interesting because you spoke about not intending to be seen, to be doing these things, but your work speaks for itself, and you do get seen because of your work. So, and what matters is the intention. What are you trying to achieve as you're doing your work? Do you have something to say to that comment? Because it's really beautiful.
I think it's to encourage all of us in our sphere of influence. Do your best in your sphere of influence. Bring the change in your environment. I sometimes can't change the whole of South Africa or the whole of Africa, but in the space I've been given, I must make a difference every single day. And so when I hear people grow, when I hear people succeed, that's what makes me happy. At work, I don't have an office. I sit in the canteen. Sometimes I'll have people walking in, different people talking to me. Sometimes people will see me smiling because 3 people I spoke to who 3 months ago or 3 years ago were in a bad space now are telling me that they are married. Now they're telling me that they've got a baby. Now they're telling me they've got a house, they've got a car, or they've got a new promotion, or they've got an MBA. That's the joy of leadership. It's when people are succeeding. That's when you get the joy. So I find my joy through seeing others grow, prosper, because of my involvement. And then if I can continue to do that, no amount of money can compensate for that. That's why I'm still here.
Wow, beautiful. Thank you so much, Mr. Lincoln, for that. Thank you so much for honoring the invite, for spending the time with us, and the wisdom that you share. More than anything, though, the being you, just doing what you do best every day, practicing what leadership is, because leadership is not a position. Being an executive is just that. It's a position that you get, but it's a position that gives you a chance to then demonstrate what leadership can be. And leadership, as you've put it nicely, it's about love, being tender, all the qualities that are seen as feminine and not too good in the boardroom. That's exactly what is required to be a leader. You must be tender and care, and your joy, as you have said, has to come from seeing people grow. If you don't have that in you, then maybe leadership is not your position. You shouldn't be there. Don't take that position. It's not for you. So thank you so much, Mr. Lincoln, for again being here. We really appreciate it. I'm just gonna ask either our deputy chair will close or SG. I don't know who's present right now to close for us.
Before I had noticed that I was muted, I was just listening to the way that the chair and Mr. Mali were just interweaving between each other. And I'm usually a very talkative individual, but as they were just, moving through the discussion, the Holy Spirit said, Lisa, keep quiet. They are just flowing, they are just flowing. So, and I was really enjoying the then comments, because even, as we were then, we were then on LinkedIn, Facebook, on our WhatsApps, raising the then program. People were then WhatsApping us, texting us, saying, "Oh, so you are bringing in, Utatumal. So your then aura and your then knowledge and the love that people have for you is felt within the then industry, and it's very profound, And we then wish to then see it grow. I have a sense from the chats that people want more, so then, I am thinking we do need to structure some roundtable conversation, with you, and then speaking on the issue of the integrity, people development, youth development, females being then put in the right decision-making positions. I think we need that form of roundtable discussion, because I think it can just bring to the fore a lot of the issues that the chair was then speaking about, and the then things that people were also speaking about in the chats and also the then Q&As. It was truly, a then great input. And I would just like to say to the people who had then attended, we then appreciate your then attendance. And if you wish to know more on the BMF, the Deputy Chair has shared a link and also information on the BMF within the chats. Please visit the link. But other than that, you can just search the BMF on your then Google. You will then see the then results as you join in terms of membership. Just close your eyes and and then click on BMF Sentin, and you will be a member instantly. We will welcome you with open hands as the BMF Sentin, and we would really love to then have your then beautiful souls within our branch. Mr. Mali, please continue to be a friend of the BMF, as the BMF truly loves and appreciates you, and we wish to see that then grow, and it's just beautiful. Other than that, ladies and gentlemen, you will join the BMF Sentin branch, as soon as the program ends, and we wish to see more of you as well. Thank you, my leaders.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.